All right.
Okay,
Are
I think
we
we're
on?
I think we're here. Yes.
We're live. All right. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. It's been a long time,
Okay,
John. You had a long
I think we're here.
summer
Yes.
gap. We're live. All right. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. It's been a long time,
Okay,
John.
Okay, sorry, I've messed things up here. I need to
All right.
mute a tab here, and then
There we
things will
are.
become
Yeah.
normal. Sorry. So yes, it was playing there with an echo coming through. All right then, let's get started.
Here we are. Okay, after 6 weeks of no live stream, a long summer. Did you make it through the summer, John?
Here I am.
Yeah. I heard it was really hot in Tokyo.
Yep. And as luck would have it,
Yeah.
somebody just decided to try and contact me. Just give me a second.
All right.
Jamie, could you
Well,
allow this
as
to
I
come
said,
back
we
to
had
me?
6 weeks of a break, so we're back here. And we're going to be talking about some interesting things today. First, we've got to get to a few questions that we received. And when we get through with those, we're going to talk about phrasal verbs. Or are we even going to call them phrasal verbs? We don't know. But let's get to our questions first, John.
Right. So I can't seem to figure out how to move the little image that you just put in there, the introductory image. Could you take that out, please, Veronica? I don't know
All
why.
right.
I don't know. So I've got
There we
my
go.
starter quest. Okay, all right. So we've got starter questions here, and these are just a few little simple questions that we got asked that we can just sort of start with today.
Mhm.
And we're being asked what the difference is in usage between a few little things here. And the first
Okay.
one is anyone and anybody, and if there's any difference between them. Do you feel there's a difference, Veronica?
Not a difference that students need to worry about, but I would say that I use anyone in a slightly more formal setting and anybody just pretty much all the time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's about it, really. But I don't think students need worry about that. There's not a big difference at all. And no one is going to, or nobody is going to say, oh, he used nobody or anybody in a formal interview. He should have said anyone. No one's going to even notice that.
For me,
So
there
don't
isn't
worry
even
about it.
No, don't worry about it. For me, there isn't even a difference of formality. I use those, and this may be a British English thing, but I use those interchangeably.
Right. Okay.
So the next one was
Question number 2.
you should get some exercise, and you'd better get some exercise.
Okay. Yeah. Well, one is definitely more urgent or perhaps threatening. Should is just advice,
Right.
right? Whereas had better is, ooh, something serious is going to happen if you don't. That's my take on it.
Yes. That's right.
Yeah.
So in the case of exercise, if you say you'd better do some exercise, you're really sort of saying, look, there could be some serious, nasty consequences if you don't exercise. You could end up in hospital.
Right.
All right. You
Yes,
really need
yes.
to, you better do that. But if you're recommending a coffee shop to someone, you'd say, oh, there's a little coffee shop open just on the corner. You should go there. And it's just a
Right.
recommendation. Whereas if you said you'd better go there, it's like, oh, what's going to happen if I don't? I mean, will I get in trouble if I don't go? So we wouldn't say you'd better go to the
No.
coffee shop, in that situation. It's a simple recommendation, and we just say should.
Yes. So if you're wondering which one to use, If it's just general advice, say should. If there's some serious consequence, then it's had better. Just a little grammar note, you're going to hear native English speakers contract the had to duh. So it's you'd better, he'd better, she'd better.
That's right.
All
Rather
right.
than saying had better, they're more likely to say you'd better. Yeah, like that.
Yeah, you'd better.
That's right. Good. And the next
All right.
one is
Number 3.
number 3. We can get useful information from reading books or by reading books.
Well, that's a preposition choice, and it depends on what the question is and what your intention is. So from is a preposition of place, meaning the question is probably where. So where can I get some useful information? You can get information from reading books. By is a preposition of manner. So the question is more than likely going to be how. How can I get some information? You can get information by reading books.
Good. Yeah, that makes sense to me. From answers where and by answers how. Good.
Typically.
Let's move on. Yeah, typically, yes. Many friends and a lot of friends.
I like this one. Okay. So first talking about many and much are the determiners used for many is used for plural, so many friends. Much is used for uncountable, so much water.
Right.
And a lot of, or a lot, or lots is used for everything. It's global, universal. Okay. There's an interesting etymology with the word lot. Okay, so in the medieval times, people were given bits of land that they could work on, and it was called a lot. Today we still use it in terms like a parking lot or an empty construction lot, things like that. And also it comes from the verb to allot, which means to give certain amounts to each different person. So imagine that you're a peasant in the medieval days and somebody gives you some land. You go, wow, I have a lot,
Right.
which is big. Okay.
A piece of land. Right.
Yeah. So lot just means many or much. It's used for both countable and uncountable.
That's right. We don't really make a difference between a lot of and lots of. I mean, I think some people think there should be a difference, and I hear people complaining about it. But people will say a lot of money, a lot of people, lots of money, lots of people. They'll use countable and uncountable don't really seem to make a difference to modern speakers when it comes to a lot of or lots of. I'd also say that it's probably more casual, isn't it? I mean, people would say, yeah, but I got lots of friends.
Yes.
You know, rather than I have many friends.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit declarative. It sounds a bit old-fashioned, really.
And I would say that in general conversation, we're going to use much and many or a lot in questions and negatives. But in a positive, like you said, much and many sound too declarative. So for example, do you have many friends? I don't have many friends. I have a lot of friends.
Yeah.
Do you have much money? I don't have much money. I have a lot of money. I wouldn't say I have much money.
I have much money sounds particularly odd, doesn't it? Yeah. So
Yeah, more
sometimes
so
use.
than many.
Go ahead.
More so than many.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I have
much is just weird in the positive.
I
It
have many
sounds odd.
friends. I have many friends is a little bit old-fashioned, but still possible. I have much money sounds
Really weird,
Shakespearean.
doesn't it, though?
And I'm going to add one question because this is something that Omar has been asking for a while. And so,
Okay.
oops, I know he's come in late here with the question, but I'll put it in anyway. And oops, I seem to have messed myself up here a bit.
That's okay. Let me fix. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
There we are.
Now, so yeah, this is Omar asking. I don't know why he's come out with that formatting. What's the difference
Okay.
between?
Let me put it a little bit bigger so people can see it
Sure.
easier.
Yeah. Let's.
There we go. Okay. So he's asking, I would not have lied to you if you had been a man. Would you have lied to me if I were a woman?
Well, apparently, yes. For some reason, it was a very sensitive issue as far as Omar is concerned. And if it was a woman, he would lie. But if you'd been a man, I wouldn't have lied to you. But the point is that there's an if there. If you had been a man.
Right.
And if plus had and the past participle means unreal past. In other words, you were not a man. And therefore, either I lied to you or let's slightly change the example and let's look at, I would not have lied to you if you had asked me. Okay? The point is you didn't ask me. So this question of whether I lied to you or told you the truth, I didn't tell you anything because you didn't ask me. All right? But then sometimes people will use it without any if, without any condition. Person says, hey, I wouldn't have lied to you. And that means I did not lie to you. There are no circumstances in which I would have lied to you. The first sentence means, well, you didn't ask me. Okay,
Right.
so that didn't happen. So this situation doesn't exist. It's all in the unreal past. It's all unreal.
Yes.
Okay, and as soon as you put in the condition with had and the past participle, then you are using the unreal past. So
it didn't happen.
It didn't happen. You didn't ask me. Okay, and I hope that explains things for Omar because he's been asking questions along those lines several times. And it's really important to understand that if you've got this here, it means that didn't happen. The if plus the had and the past participle, that combination tells us that it's the unreal past and it just didn't happen.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
And also just a note to Omar, if he's listening.
I think he is, yes.
You might want to go to the Oxford Learner's Dictionary and look up the word would and try to notice when you read the definitions, you're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice the subtle differences between each of the examples. Because would is definitely the most difficult modal to understand. It's used in many different grammatical structures, and it's used with some very unique native English speaker nuances. So it's a word that's really worth studying well. Just write down a couple of the example sentences from meaning 1 and put a box around it.
Yeah.
And then put examples from number 2 and put a box around it, and just go back from your page and look at it and say, what's the difference here? It's the same word, but it has very different applications.
That's
And
right.
just try to get a sense of it.
Yeah.
It's not an easy task.
And with modals, the negative forms are often worth taking into account as well, because they don't necessarily mean the direct opposite of the positive.
Right. So if I say, I played basketball, and then I make a negative, I did not play basketball, those are perfect positive, negative ideas. But with modals, you don't have that perfect equivalence of positive, negative. They have different meanings. So yeah, Omar, take a quick, careful look at the word would, and if you have more questions, ask us again next
Well, he
week.
is asking, but I'm afraid we're going to have to move on.
Well, we'll get back to you next week, Omar, or the next live stream, I should say, Omar. Don't worry. We could probably talk about wood for about 5 hours. Really. It's a very complicated word. And really, all modals are very complicated. I had a colleague a classmate when I was going to university, and her linguistics thesis was modals. So She wrote an entire book on modals, about 600 pages.
Right.
That's how in depth you can get.
So there are probably about 100 pages just on wood in that 600-page book.
Exactly.
Let's move on.
All right. To the main topic today.
Phrasal and prepositional verbs.
Can we say something Shakespearean here, like Hamlet?
Like what?
To phrasal verb or not to phrasal verb? That is the question.
Well, are they?
How do we do that? I don't know.
Are they phrasal or are they prepositional and so on? Or what's the difference and what's going on here? That's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get on to that topic for now.
Okay. Phrasal and prepositional verbs.
We've got a lot of verbs that seem to consist of more than one word. And you got, for example, get up. Peter got up late this morning. In many languages, that would be one word. In Japanese, it's okiru. In Spanish, it's levantarse. Well, it's got the se on the end, but it's essentially a one-word verb with a reflexive on it. Then we've got things like count on. I can count on you. I can count on my wife to support me, that sort of thing. Turn on the light. And put up with, where we've got two little particles after the verb. So we've got this kind of verb plus something else combination going on very frequently in English, and it's a tricky area. It's quite confusing for.
So what are you going to call those little bits after the verb?
Well, that's the problem. I go onto different websites and look at different grammar books, and some of them contradict each other. I mean, for example, this website here, this Ginger website, which you can look for it if you want to. It says that agree with, I agree with you, is a phrasal verb. It gives us an example.
Oh my. I would never consider that a phrasal verb.
I wouldn't either, no. I mean, it doesn't fit the way I understand phrasal verbs, as we'll carry on and we'll see what Veronica and I think as we carry on. English Bix says it's a prepositional verb. So,
which is interesting, okay. To tell you the truth, until about maybe 2 years ago, I had never heard the term prepositional verb.
Really? Uh-huh.
No,
Well,
I'd heard prepositional collocation,
yeah.
but I'd never heard prepositional verb. So what's a term, really, John?
Well, yes, I mean, I'm sticking with prepositional verb, but it is weird because, if you say the 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 book is on the table, do you say that is
Yeah.
on? Is on is a prepositional verb? Well, no, you wouldn't, would you? And if you say, I saw the book on the well, for example,
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah.
he walked into the room. Would you say that walked
Okay.
into is prepositional verb, or isn't it simply just a verb followed by a prepositional phrase? I'm not going to drag out that can of worms today. I'm just
Yeah.
going to try and make a simple difference between two basic types of structure,
Mm-hmm.
but
Okay.
that fall roughly into sort of four groups.
All right. Okay.
And yes, I mean, what are phrasal and prepositional? Are they two ways of talking about the same thing? Are they different? And if they're different, what's the difference? And who cares? I mean, do we have to?
Right. Yeah. Does it matter?
Does it
matter?
make-
This is something that students, I think, really need to question, especially with textbooks and websites and things like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes grammar teachers and other people who want to teach language get a little bit carried away with a concept that they get. Oh, let's call it this, and we're going to make it different from that. When does it really matter to the average speaker if there's a difference? It doesn't change the grammar, it doesn't change the meaning, and everybody gets it. So are we
Yeah.
just wasting our breath sometimes on these differences?
I think we can overdo the jargon, the specialized vocabulary, and seeing differences where, frankly, there's no practical application for that difference. So I'm going to end up today with just two things that I think we really need to know, and the rest of it, yeah, the rest of it, I'm going to suggest that we don't really need that. So, okay, I'm going to forget about the labels to start with and just look at the way that they behave and put them into four basic groups. You've got intransitive, so there's no object. You've got transitive, and it's separable, and you've got transitive that's inseparable. In fact, I might have put those the wrong way around. I think I want to change those.
Change those around, because turn on is...
I've put it in the wrong way around, look.
Yeah, there we go.
So if we look at the four examples that we had, like get up, Peter got up late this morning, then he didn't get up anything. There's no object to it. It's intransitive. This is what we say when a verb doesn't have an object.
Can I just make a note here for some of our listeners at a slightly lower level? This morning, late, from bed, at 10 o'clock, all of those other phrases you can put after got up are adverbs. So those aren't objects. So forget about that. We can add adverbs or not, do anything. So just to give a few examples, Peter got up, period. I can stop there. I don't need an object. Peter got up this morning. Well, that's adverbial extra information. It's not an object. Just so that our lower level students understand what's not an object. Okay?
I think this is often a question that comes up. People say, what's the passive of, I got up late? You get those kinds of questions
Late
coming up.
isn't the object.
Late
Yeah.
isn't an object, and you can only make a passive if there is an object. And if there's no object, forget it. There's no passive. So,
Right. And some people are still struggling with this. Well, this morning is a thing. So isn't that an object? No.
No.
In this sentence and this structure, this morning is a time. And
Yeah.
a time is an adverb.
These are adverbs. I got up late this morning. Late is an adverb, and this morning is an adverb. They both tell you more about how you got up.
Yes.
You didn't get late up. You didn't get up late. You didn't grab something called late and get it up. All right, it doesn't make sense. All right,
Right.
It just describes how you got up.
Yeah.
And the time you got up. So that's the intransitive type. And then we've got things like count on, where you say, I can always count on my wife to support me. That's the inseparable type. You'd say, I can always count on her.
But you can't count her on.
No, that's what happens with the next example. Turn on. Could you turn on the light, please? Could you turn it on? You have to put the object separating it from the particle, separating the verb from the particle. You have to put it in between. So you can say, can you turn on the light, or can you turn the light on? And then if you replace the light with it, it's could you turn it on? And then the fourth type is transitive with two particles, which is usually inseparable. He couldn't put up with his boss any longer, so put up with, you've got two particles here. All right, he couldn't put up with his boss any longer, so he quit. Usually those are inseparable like that, but there's only one example that I really managed to think of, and so that's the exception. You've got let's get it over with. All right. In this case, the object comes before the two particles. Let's get it over with. So it's something that you don't want to do. You're trying to delay it, but come on, hey, look, it's an unpleasant thing, but we have to do it. So let's finish it. Let's get it over with. And that's.
And you wouldn't. Let's get over our work.
No,
doesn't
it
work that way.
Let's get it. Whether it's let's get our work over with.
No, it has to.
It has
separate.
to be, doesn't it?
That's odd, because that has to separate. There's no choice.
Yeah, it has to separate, and it's the only one that I could find, or that I could think of before today's lesson. So I don't think it's something that's going to come up very often for students. So the main...
No, but it is interesting to think about. It might come up.
It might come up sometime.
Later
Yes,
on.
yes.
There's another one. That could be a good task for the people listening on YouTube. Count how many phrasal verbs John and I used in this live stream.
That's right. Yes. I mean, if somebody were to listen to this live stream and go through picking out all the phrasal verbs or prepositional verbs, go through that I just said, picking out. So,
and see how many they can come up with.
We use these all the time, which is why it's really important. It's a really important aspect of studying English, that you have a fairly good understanding of how that works. Yeah.
And John, how many students have you had in your career that say to you, I'm just not going to bother with phrasal verbs. I mean, I understand the language pretty well, and I can read at such and such a level. I'm okay. It's too much of a headache. I'm not going to do it. I get students telling me that so often, and I say, you're leaving out like probably 30% of English vocabulary. It's huge. You've really got to give it a try, or you're just not going to get past the intermediate level, really. You're going to sound like an academic textbook if you don't start using phrasal verbs.
You have to use phrasal verbs. I mean, many, for example, to put up with something, we could say tolerate. Okay.
But like I said, now you sound like an academic person or a textbook, or
Yeah. He couldn't tolerate his boss.
You know what? Or someone who's learning English as a second language.
Yeah, and hasn't really grasped the idiomatic way of using the language, because these phrasal verbs are pretty idiomatic. So let's move on a little bit. The one that really causes us problems here is the third one, because this is the one where, you know, we are changing the structure. Could you turn the light on, as well as could you turn on the light? And then, as we've said, if you change the light to a pronoun, it has to be turn it on, and you can't say turn on it.
So let's quickly go to slide 9 there, John.
Yes,
and
you've
just
illustrated it here quite nicely.
With the graphic here.
Yeah. So
right, your particle is on. It can be placed between the verb and the object, or it can be placed after the object. However, if your object is a noun, a full noun, so the light, you can do both. You can turn on the light, or you can turn the light on. If you change your object to a pronoun, which hopefully students realize in most conversations, once I say the light, that's it for the whole conversation. The rest of the conversation, we're going to refer to it as it.
People will probably say.
Important. So you can turn it on, but you cannot turn on it, okay? So once you've got the pronoun replacing the full noun, it must be separated. All right. I think probably the one I get a lot, because my students are always going in their cars to collect their children after school. So they're going to pick the kids up.
Right.
Or they could pick up the kids, or they could pick them up, but don't say pick up them.
No, that's right. I'm going to pick up them is wrong. And there's so many verbs that follow this pattern. And these are what I'm going to, in the end, say, well, these are the true phrasal verbs, essentially.
I think I've come to accept that definition over the past, I would say, John, 30 years ago, just everything was a phrasal verb. There was not really a whole lot of talk about what's the difference between this and that. As soon as your verb had a different meaning, then it was a phrasal verb. So agree with wasn't ever considered a phrasal verb. It's just there's a preposition on the end of the verb.
I do see a lot of that, yes.
Then everything else was a phrasal verb. But in the last decade or two, I think linguists have been really analyzing phrasal verbs a little more carefully and trying to see what exactly is going on here, because the structures are different, as you pointed out in that slide with those 4 different types. So yeah, I think this is the true phrasal verb.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting a request to increase the size of the font, so I'll try to do that as much as I can. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
help you out. So I think we're going to go back to slide 6 now, right?
Right. And before I carry on, though, I would just slide 5, I think. I just like to thank Ray, who has joined us tonight, because he's doing a very good job backing us up on the live chat. We're so caught up with explaining things here. We haven't got a lot of time to answer questions on the live chat, and it's great, Ray, that you are there. Thank you so much for
Is he?
helping
how
us.
Wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, he's effectively, I think, answered Omar's point, and he's now discussing phrasal verbs with Army. So thank you so much for that. Okay, now
Okay.
going back then to where we were a minute ago, we've got the structural problem: can we separate it or not? And then we've got the meaning, the semantics, the fact that these combinations may mean something really different from what we think they mean, and even inside phrasal verbs there can be several different meanings. You know, he turned the light off, and oh my God, he really turned me off. Okay, it's a different kind of turned me off or turned off. He made me feel. He gave me a strong negative feeling. He made me feel very negative about something. He turned me off.
Okay.
Whatever it was. So these kinds of specialized meanings, I think we've got both of these problems. The grammatical problem, the structural problem of is it separable or not, and we've got this question of the fact that they all have very complicated specialized meanings. So coming around in a circle then and back to the labels of phrasal and prepositional, some books and websites just call it prepositional if the meaning is rather different, if it has a different meaning. And I don't really agree with that. As I've said, I think that the difference is better observed through the structure of the verbs and the verb and particle combination, rather than through the semantics, through the meaning. But I'll come back to that a little bit later. For now, though, the word that comes after the verb. And here I feel that we have a problem because it's sorry, I'm looking at my eye was caught by something in the live chat. Nirendele, you were waiting for your question to be answered, and you answered it already in the comments section of another video. Could you repeat your question? Because I think we're getting some very similar questions from you and from Omar about wood. And if you check through in the live chat, you may find that your question has been answered. But so very quickly, just say that. Right. Prepositions. We are stuck with the fact that we've got our grammar coming to us from Latin. And in Latin, it's very clear. Let's just take a look at the whole idea of a preposition and how it comes to us.
Wait, John. Let's just clarify that. It's not that our grammar comes from Latin.
No. So did I say that?
The words we use to describe our grammar.
That's a much better way of putting it.
Historically come from people who studied Latin and believed that now I'm not condemning these people. They didn't have the internet and a lot of other sources of information. These people in the 16th, 17th centuries really believed that Latin was the gold standard of languages, and that we could describe all the languages on the earth from a Latin point of view. What they didn't understand at that time is the fact that there are different language families.
Yes.
So if you describe a Slavic language, say Russian, Polish, Ukraine, from the point of view of a Chinese grammar, you can imagine how ridiculous that whole proposition would be.
Yeah.
That's the exact same thing that happened in the 16th, 17th centuries. The people described a Germanic language, which is English, from the point of view of a Romance language, which is Latin.
Yeah.
So that's why we have these crazy terminologies and structures that just don't fit. Calling something a present perfect because that's what it is in Latin.
Yeah.
English doesn't really have that equivalent. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
So those languages, the Romance languages, don't have phrasal verbs. So how could they possibly describe this phenomena?
Yeah,
Right?
these phenomena, this phenomenon. Yeah, yeah. We've got to try to understand how the idea of a preposition works in English, and it's not the same, especially if you're coming from a language like Spanish or French or Latin language. It's not really the same. So let's just take a look here. The basic idea of a preposition is the book is on the table, the cat's under the chair, and the bird is in its nest. In other words, it's telling us something about the relationship between the book and the table, or the bird and the nest, and so on. It shows how these things are positioned in relationship to each other. So that's the basic idea of a preposition. But in English, it's a lot more complicated than that, because we've got, in addition to the fact we've got a lot of words which are not prepositions in Latin, like you can talk in English about up the street and down the street, and those are not prepositions in Latin languages, and so on. We've also got the fact that the preposition can be very much connected with the verb, more closely connected with the verb, in fact, than with the noun. She put on her hat. Really, that breaks down into she as the subject, with put on acting as the verb, and her hat as the object of the verb put on. She put on her hat. We can't say, what did she put on her hat? No. Okay? We can't say, what did she, and even if somebody says, what did she put on? We wouldn't say, on her hat. On does not live with her hat. On clearly lives with put on.
Say something there, John, which is kind of maybe funny in a sense. You've got, she put on her hat as a unit. You're using put on as your unit there. Oh, somebody asked if we could make this bigger. Sorry, we'll make it bigger.
If we can make things a little bit bigger to try and get, but I should say,
okay, but you could say she put a flower on her hat, and now you've got a completely different usage of the preposition.
Right. That's the more traditional, that's the basic use of the preposition. This way of using words which look like prepositions, but which linguists have had to go back and say, no, it's not really a preposition. Let's call it a particle. In fact, if it's anything, it's an adverb.
Well, it works as an adverb in what we were looking at before. So if you separate it, she put it on.
Yes.
So this is a verb. This is an object. Well, if you look at word order in a sentence, what comes after an object?
Right.
An adverb.
Yeah.
It's always an adverb.
Yeah.
So, interesting. What are we going to call it? Again, what's an adverb? There's a term from Latin again. Maybe we need to revise the whole English language. I don't know.
Yes, somebody may come along. Just a minute. I'm
Give
just
us
sending a little
some
message in the live
new
chat.
ideas, new terms for these things. Yeah.
So,
And just a little bit of statistics here, something that I found out interesting. Spanish has, and now these numbers aren't going to be exact, okay, but more or less in the ballpark. Spanish has 33 prepositions. German has 90.
right.
English has 130. So either we have a lot more ways to talk about where we put things than Spanish people do,
Right.
or we just put too many words into the same category. Maybe we need a new category.
Yeah. Well, we do use them prepositionally. I mean, up the street, to go up the street. You know, you're going up the street. It does show something about the relationship between you and the street. You're going up the street or up the mountain. But in Spanish, you can't go arriba la calle. Okay, you subir. Okay, you're going up. So in other languages, they don't have the same words as prepositions as we do in English, and especially Latin languages tend to have a lot more. So, okay, we've got something like she put on her hat, where put on seems to live together. I mean, linguists are divided about this. Not everybody would agree that that put on forms a transitive verb. But I think from a learner's point of view, that's the most logical way to see it. She put on her hat. What did she do to her hat? She put it on. And in this case, you've got this weird moving around of the pronoun and the particle. But this is the basic structure. And then we get to she sat on the chair, and that's the much more, that's the sort of traditional way, or the basic way of using a preposition. So it shows the relationship between her and the chair. She sat on it. So and again, here we've got the verb sat, and you've got a prepositional phrase on the chair following the verb. So she sat, and then prepositional phrase on the chair describing where she sat. So that's the more basic use of a preposition. Now, if I look at a website like Wall Street English, which I quite like, and I think it's fairly good. I mean, the pages that I've looked at seem to be pretty well done. So if I could just suggest that people might like to look at Wall Street English. Okay, I'll put that over there out of the way. So that they explain it like that. They say that sit on is a prepositional verb, sit on the chair, and put on where you put it on, and these ones where it changes so you can put your hat on or put on your hat. This group is the phrasal verbs. So they're looking at phrasal verbs as something which are structurally different from prepositional verbs. And that's basically how I learned it when I was studying linguistics many years ago. That's how they taught it to me at that time. Of course, as a native speaker, I had no idea. I just used these things without thinking about it, as native speakers do. But that became, for me, a little bit of an eye-opener into how a non-native speaker would need to approach the language. So I would recommend going to that Wall Street English site and looking at their page. And of course, I've got my own video here, and I'll copy and paste that into the copy and paste. So check out my video here where I've illustrated all of this and given a lot more examples than we've been able to go through tonight. I say tonight because it's night time for me here in Japan. So I think that should work, and that should open.
I'm just starting my afternoon.
Right. And some other people, they may have got up very early for this. Yes, that's working. So, okay.
All right.
There's a lot more information on this that you can get here. So to sort of wind things up a little bit about what do we really need to know here. We can now say that if the particle comes after the verb, if there's no object, if it's not transitive, then it can't be a preposition because there's no noun that it can possibly be attached with. He got up.
Right.
There's no question of it being a preposition telling us about the relationship between one object and another object, because there is no other object. There's nothing. There's just he got up. Finished.
And are we calling that, so we're calling that type 1?
Yes, that's the type 1 that we looked at way back here. Intransitive. Okay, Peter got up late this morning, and what we're saying in our conclusion at this stage is that look at that as, if you have to put it into a grammatical category, the best one that fits there is an adverb. So the use of up in get up is generally classified as an adverb. And the same thing applies to your group 3 here, your separable transitive verbs. So turn on the light, put on your hat, or whatever. Again, we generally classify the particle as an adverb.
Okay. Because it can come after the object, and really, where else can an adverb go?
Yeah, just the fact that it comes after the object in certain cases turn on the light, but also turn the light on. That's the way of turning the light. The way of turning is you're turning
on.
How
does it turn the light on?
Yeah, it's how you're doing it.
Okay.
And how are you picking it? I'm picking it up. I mean, that's the original idea. Although, as we've said, the specialized meaning of a lot of these phrasal verbs can sometimes be so obscure that it's hard to connect the original idea of that word in its prepositional sense to the actual phrasal verb. You have to check it in a dictionary. That's something else I'll come on to in a minute. So you can say that finally then prepositional verbs are verbs followed by a preposition, and phrasal verbs are verbs that are followed by an adverb. Okay, that's how that would work out. Okay, yeah, people want a little bit more size here. I would say that if it looks too small on your screen here, what you can do is watch in full screen, although I don't know how this affects people who are watching using mobile phones, because
right, and we can move this up a little bit, John, so
we
I can make
can indeed,
the end a bit bigger for you here.
Yeah. So we can just increase the size there a bit. Thanks. Whoops, is that too much? Okay, so, all right. Do we really need to know all this stuff about adverbs and particles and prepositions and phrasal and prepositional? Especially given the fact that different grammar books and different web pages and so on give different explanations of it all. I think we can really get into trouble. We can tie ourselves in knots trying to is this phrasal, is this prepositional, is this an adverb, is this a particle or a preposition? And in the end, what does it matter? what matters is not whether you know the technical name for it according to somebody's theory of language. What matters is, can you use it? And from that point of view, there are just two things that you need. Okay, one is you need to know what it means. Obviously, if you don't know what it means, you're going to end up creating problems because you're going to use the wrong word in the wrong place. And that's just like the vocabulary item in other languages, as I've said, put up with. You could say tolerate in English, but in Spanish that's what you'd normally say. You'd say tolerar. Okay, aguantar. Those would be the kinds of one-word verbs. And many of these phrasal verbs in other languages would just be a single word.
Yes.
It's just that in English, they're broken down into 2 or 3 words. And that's all it is, really. You have to learn vocabulary in every language, so you'd have to learn that vocabulary. We can talk about techniques for learning vocabulary separately, but there's no rule or guideline or principle that you can use to help you to understand these beasts. I mean, you have to figure it out from the context. If somebody says, oh, that really pisses me off, you can figure out that they're not pleased.
They look a little bit angry. Yeah.
Yeah, they looked angry when they said it. I don't think that has a good meaning.
Pisses me off. Oh, and it's separable. What do you know?
And it's, you can notice that the way of using it, okay?
Yeah.
So you can figure it out from the context, you can figure it out using a dictionary, whatever, just the same way as any other vocabulary. But the other thing you need to know is, yes, as you say, the structural point, is it separable or not? So if you hear somebody say, oh, he really pisses me off, then you'd say, oh, you think, oh, that means we can say he pissed off the teacher, or he pissed the teacher off, but okay, I think I've got it, right? How to use it in a sentence and what the structure would be. And I'm sorry, everybody whose sensibilities may be a little bit... I did use a rather rude example, but that's the whole point. A lot of these phrasal verbs are very much idiomatic and used in everyday...
And I'd like to just give the students a little bit of a heads up, a little bit of a warning. They are... very emotional, okay, quite often.
Yes.
So make sure when you learn these phrasal verbs, look through the dictionary completely, because a lot of phrasal verbs have sexual innuendos.
Right.
And
yes.
That's going to be one of the final definitions in the dictionary. So make sure you scroll through the whole dictionary. And if there is a sexual innuendo or something that's a little bit aggressive that we wouldn't say around our grandmother, the dictionary will say offensive.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So
dictionaries will tell you if it's, rude language or something that is just used in slang or whatever it might be. But the point is that these things are used very, very frequently, and if you want to get a sense of the way that native speakers are using the language, you are going to need to get used to these. Now, Ray, I can't seem to be able to edit that. I don't know why. Could you take Ray's name out of there? Ray has put in a useful point here in terms of studying these. Can you see on slide? Yes, on slide.
Yeah, I'm there.
9.
Slide 9.
Yeah. So if you could take out, can we take out? Oh, I can do it now. I don't know why I couldn't do it before.
Okay.
Right. So yes, the off tells us something. Off. He pisses me off. Okay, it turns me off. The off tells us something. Oh, right. There's a kind of negative feeling. At is an aggressive particle. Okay, if you talk to someone, then that's a communicative thing. But if you talk at them, you're kind of talking. You're not letting them. You're talking at them.
And this is this live chat has actually brought up a bunch of ideas that I've got, and I'm thinking, our next live chat is going to be sooner than 1 month. So perhaps we could talk about phrasal verbs again a little bit in our next one. I've got a few ideas along the lines of what you were just saying about how to help students to learn phrasal verbs. Now, it's not perfect. No vocabulary approach is ever going to be perfect, but it's along those lines. Learn what the particle means. Learn it literally. What does off mean? And from there you can expand the metaphorical meanings that are in these phrasal verbs and what are we calling these other ones? Prepositional verbs,
yeah.
Things like that. Learning what the preposition is, or the adverb, what does that mean, is going to help you a lot more than learning what the verb means, because it's going to change the meaning of the verb.
That's right. Look at, look for, look after.
The traditional approach of the phrasal verb dictionary is completely backwards. They've got it listed in alphabetical order, leading with the verb. So you learn take off, take on, take away, take through. No, I don't agree with that. I think you should learn away. And then take away, bring away, come away, get away.
Yeah, the away tells us something, doesn't it? It tells us a lot about how that is working.
Yeah.
We're getting a question about recommending any particular works. Now, my great friend
Mario Rinvolucri, he's got some really good books.
And he is my great friend, and he's helped me so much in my life. So I'd just like to give him a little thank you as well tonight, a little plug. And his book on prepositions is pretty useful. And in the live chat, recommending a good grammar book and a good dictionary, but good dictionary, Oxford Learner.
I think if you're at an intermediate level, the Longman Longman Dictionary of Contemporary English. Woo! It's a big title. It's really good for students because it gives you all the verb patterns, give somebody something, give something to somebody, blah, blah, blah. It has a lot of little blue boxes in the dictionary that troubleshoot certain words like he explained the problem to me. Be careful, don't say he explained me the problem.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of images, and it's a great dictionary for, say, intermediate and above, I would say, for sure.
And of course, a lot of these dictionaries are accessible online these days. I'm going to put in the Oxford Learner, Longman's and Collins' CoBuild. I'm putting those into the live chat.
Yeah.
For dictionaries.
As far as grammar books go, you know what? You can, if you really, really learn how to use a dictionary, you don't need a grammar book.
Yeah, most dictionaries will.
It's all there.
Yeah.
It's all there. The verb patterns, the structures, the verb always has the verb in the infinitive, the past participle. You got the three forms right there. With nouns, it tells you if it's countable, uncountable, how you can use it in different ways. But just really learn to use a dictionary and throw those crazy grammar books away.
Well, I don't know. I think something like what do you think of Murphy English Grammar in Use?
I think it's great for the fireplace. It keeps you really warm.
But
No, honestly,
you
I
don't
don't
you
I
don't
don't
think you
like
wouldn't
any of
recommend
those.
students?
No,
I found
no
that some
fill in the
students
blanks.
get
I
they
don't like fill in the blanks.
fill in the
I think
blanks. Yeah,
students are
yeah.
smart enough. Students are intelligent enough to make their own exercises. They've been doing this for years. They don't need more. I
I-
play, he plays, we play, we were playing, we have played. Oh, that's not doing anything. That's,
I'm going to go back and repeat what we said before about using Google Ngram to
mm,
uh, find out what native speakers really say.
yeah. Oh, here's a good one. Here's a good one for what native speakers really say. So the Oxford Learner's Dictionary is really good to show students the correct way to say a sentence. But the Oxford Online, I think they're like a companion dictionary or something. It's called Lexico, and they use actual sentences that people have actually said,
Right.
right? Whereas Oxford Learner's Dictionary is great, but they construct the sentences themselves.
Well, this is what I like about Colin's CoBuild. It's based on a corpus. That is to say, it's based on a large amount of native speaker English, which is really what Ngram is. Ngram is a huge body of books, basically all the books that are in Google Books. And you can see everything that everybody has said in Google Books. And because it's in a book, it means that it's been through an editorial process. People have looked at it and thought about that language. So sometimes strange things slip through, and not all books are published by native speaker publishers. So you do sometimes get things that are a little bit odd, but mostly if you look on Ngram, you're seeing, oh, this is how people use these expressions. This is what people actually say.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, right.
Well, let me can we just finish up with one quick thing on slide 16 that might help the students a little bit with the ideas of phrasal verbs.
Yep.
Okay.
Let me just take you there.
16.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So like a lot of people said, Ray and your friend Mario, Rinvolucri, figure out the particle first. Figure out what it means. Is it talking about place, like in my house? It talk about time, in 2 hours, or manner, in a strange way. How's that? There's a good one for manner.
Right.
Then I think we were talking about this a little bit. Is it, this was like, what was the thing you said? Oh, agree with. That's just a verb with a preposition. That's nothing weird.
Yeah.
So you're just you're not changing the meaning of the verb at all.
No.
Okay. So it has no metaphorical meaning. And once you start getting into phrasal verbs, now we're getting up the metaphorical tree. Now we're taking the verb take and the particle in to a different level. But I think if you've understood in, then this is going to be easier to take in. It's going to be easier to understand.
Right.
And
right.
of course, the highest level probably is just an expression. I didn't get a very good example here.
Yeah.
But expressions are just not going to make sense at
Right.
the first viewing. But if you had learned in from the literal sense, looked at it with some collocations, went through some phrasal verbs, I really believe you're going to understand the expression a little bit better. So you might want to take that path to beginning your journey with phrasal verbs.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, John, do we
I think we're
have
going to
other
have to wind it up. I
questions
think
in
we've
the
run out of
chat,
time.
or
No, we've
is
run
it
out of
time
time.
to say
Nirendele
goodbye?
still is not sure about something relating to the first conditional and the zero conditional, but I think we're going to have to say that we don't have time today.
Yeah.
Try to get your questions in early, people, because sometimes this happens. We get a rush of questions and a rush of things, and we can't deal with everything. So if you can get your questions in early, and it also helps us to prepare our answers, so that if we know
Right.
what you're
So
going
we
to
have
ask us,
some
we
good
can
graphics
get some
and
examples. We can put it together more professionally for you. So we're going to say thank you, everybody, for joining
yeah.
us, and
Thank
we're going
you.
to say goodbye and hope that everybody has a very good weekend.
And we'll be seeing you a little more quickly than usual. I think somewhere around the beginning of October. We're not quite sure what the date is yet, but it won't be quite a month.
Yeah, probably the first, if we can, the first Friday in October. Okay,
All right.
so that's
All right. Bye, everyone.